Chapter 1.
Let me go.
She said it once, quietly, and the gates of Emberfall stood open behind her exactly as they had all morning, unguarded, unbarred, wide enough for a woman to walk through and never look back. No hand held her. No wall stopped her. The only thing standing between Wren Calder and the road home was a king who had not yet learned that presence is not the same as permission.
Not until you remember. You're mine,
Ronan Ashgrave said, and he smiled when he said it. The old smile, the one that had once made an entire court fall silent. The one he clearly still believed was charm instead of the wound it actually was. Wren turned to face him fully, and something in her stillness made the smile falter before she even opened her mouth.
I was never yours. Not 5 years ago when you called me a servant girl mistaking fate for opportunity in front of your entire court.
Not now, when you say a sentence like that expecting it to sound like devotion instead of ownership. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. You don't get to lose the right to claim me and then claim me anyway, just because it's convenient again. The silence that followed was not the silence of a man composing his next command. It was the silence of a man realizing, in real time, exactly how badly he had misjudged the moment. That was wrong of me, Ronan said finally, and the words came out rougher than any command he'd ever given. I heard it the second I said it. That was the old way of speaking to you, and I have no right to it anymore. He stepped back, not forward, putting distance between them instead of closing it. The gates are open. They were open before you arrived. My guards have orders not to touch you, not to stop you, not to so much as look at you the wrong way. If you walk through them right now, no one in this kingdom will follow you, and I will not send anyone after. Wren studied him, waiting for the trick, the softness that curdled into control the moment she believed it. It didn't come.
Then why did you call me back here at all?
She asked. Because Alaric Vane has called the right, Ronan said, and because whatever this kingdom decides about my crown in 6 days, it is not only my crown that burns if he wins. The border he intends to seize first isn't mine. It's yours. That stopped her more than any wrist could have. Hollow's Edge, she said. He's already moved soldiers to the northern pass, Ronan said. Not toward Emberfall, toward your border. He knows exactly what you are, Wren, even if you've spent 5 years hoping the rest of the world had forgotten. He knows the Emberkin line never truly died, and he knows that if he can prove your bond to me was severed, he doesn't just win a throne. He wins the right to walk into Hollow's Edge and call it ungoverned land, ripe for his taking. Wren felt the old scar on her wrist prickle faintly, not with pain, but with something closer to warning. You're not telling me this to keep me here, she said slowly, understanding dawning even as she spoke it. You're telling me this because I need to know it regardless of what I decide about you. Yes, Ronan said, and there was no calculation in it that she could find. I owe you the truth whether you stay for 1 hour or 5 years. What you do with it is entirely yours to decide. I have no claim on that choice. I gave up any right to make it for you a long time ago. For the first time since she'd arrived at Emberfall's gates, Wren didn't move toward the road. She didn't move toward him either. She stood exactly where she was, in the space between leaving and staying, and let the weight of what he'd said settle into her chest alongside the bond she had spent 5 years trying not to feel. If I stay, she said finally, it will not be for you. It will not be for this crown or this court, or any bond burning under my skin. I will stay, because Hollow's Edge is mine to protect, and because I intend to find out exactly what Alaric Vane thinks he knows about my bloodline before he uses it against everyone I love. That's the only reason I'd want you to stay, Ronan said quietly. Not for me, for the truth, and for whatever you decide to do with it once you have it. Behind them, the great bell of Emberfall began to toll, slow and deep, calling the court to gather. But for the first time in 5 years, Wren Calder walked back through those gates on her own 2 feet, by her own choice, carrying nothing of his and everything of her own. Chapter 2. The study in the North Tower had not changed in 5 years, but the man sitting across from her had, or claimed to have, and Wren intended to test every inch of that claim before she believed a word of it. "Tell me what actually happened," she said. "Not the version you've told yourself to sleep at night. The truth from the beginning, including the parts that make you look small." Ronan did not flinch from the request, though something in his shoulders braced, as if preparing to carry a weight he'd avoided for half a decade. "My father died 3 months before you arrived at the border gate," he said. "The council had already signed a betrothal contract on my behalf before I'd finished burying him. An alliance with the Sable Court, sealed through marriage to Lyra Sable, meant to hold off a war with Ironfang that Emberfall could not have survived. I was 23, grieving, and told by every advisor I trusted that the kingdom's survival depended on a marriage I had never chosen and a woman I had never met. And then I appeared," Wren said, "and the bond burned in front of 1,000 witnesses, and suddenly your convenient war-ending marriage had a problem standing in the middle of the hall." "Yes?" He met her eyes without looking away, which she noted, and did not yet forgive. "Counselor Bram Ashford stood beside me that night. He was the one who leaned in and told me, quietly, that if I acknowledged the bond in front of the court, the Sable Alliance would collapse within the hour, and Ironfang would cross the border within the season. He gave me the words to say. I was the coward who said them." Wren went very still. "You're telling me the humiliation wasn't only yours." "I'm telling you it was mine to refuse, and I didn't," Ronan said. Bram Ashford built the sentence. "I'm the one who spoke it to your face. I will not let his hand on the blade make mine any cleaner. But you should know his name, because he is still on my council, and he has spent 5 years making certain no one questioned what happened that night, including, I suspect, feeding Alaric Vane information long before this rite was ever called. That was new. That was useful." Wren filed it away with the same careful precision she'd once used to catalog every insult, every slight, every reason the world had given her to disappear quietly. "And Lyra?" she asked. "I want to hear about her honestly, Ronan. Not as an obstacle you were relieved to lose. As a person." Something in his expression softened into something closer to grief than she'd expected. "Lyra never wanted the marriage either," he said. "She told me so on our wedding night, plainly, without cruelty, that she'd been raised from the age of 12 to understand her worth as a treaty, not a woman, and that she'd stopped expecting anything else long before she ever met me. We were never unkind to each other. We were simply 2 people the council had traded like currency, trying to build something livable out of an arrangement neither of us had asked for." His voice dropped. "She died in a border skirmish 18 months later, a raid the Alliance was supposed to prevent, and didn't. I failed her exactly the way I failed you, Wren, not through cruelty, through cowardice dressed as duty. I let men in a council room decide what our lives were worth, and both of you paid for it." Wren absorbed that slowly, and found, to her own quiet surprise, that no jealousy rose to meet it, only a grim, familiar recognition. "She deserved better than being a name men used to justify what they did to me," she said. "And I deserved better than being a name men used to justify what they did to her. That's not a coincidence, Ronan. That's a system. And systems don't apologize. People inside them have to actually dismantle them." "Then help me dismantle it," Ronan said. "Not as my mate. as the last living voice of the line this kingdom was built on. Bram Ashford has spent 5 years consolidating power behind my throne because he believed I was too guilty and too distracted to notice. I want the council archives opened. I want every treaty he's brokered in my name examined. And I want it done whether or not you ever choose to stand beside me again, because it should have been done 5 years ago, regardless of what happened between us. Ren looked at him for a long moment, weighing the offer against everything she'd learned not to trust. "Open them," she said finally. "And when Bram Ashford's name comes up in front of the full court, and it will, you will not protect him to save yourself embarrassment. You will expose him completely, publicly, and let the consequences fall exactly where they belong." "Agreed," Ronan said, without hesitation, and for the first time, Ren allowed herself to believe that this particular promise, at least, might actually be kept. Chapter 3. The road to Hollow's Edge took 2 days on horseback, and Ren rode it alone, because whatever else was true about Ronan Ashgrave's reformation, she was not yet willing to let him set foot on her land uninvited, and he had not asked to. What she found at the border made her blood run cold. "Riders," said old Issa, the hedge witch who had taken Ren in 5 years ago and asked nothing in return but honesty, "moving along the northern tree line for the better part of a week. Iron Fang colors, though they don't wear them openly. And 3 days passed, a man came through the eastern gate claiming to be a surveyor, asking questions about boundary stones and old land grants no surveyor should care about. 'Alaric's men,' Ren said, 'mapping Hollow's Edge before he's even won the right.' 'Worse,' Issa said, drawing a folded parchment from beneath her shawl. 'This was left at the shrine 3 nights ago. No rider seen coming or going.' Ren unfolded it and felt something in her chest go cold and sharp at once. It was a copy of a land grant, old, official, bearing a seal she recognized from the Emberfall archives, declaring Hollow's Edge unclaimed territory. Its governance defaulted to the crown in the absence of a recognized Emberkin heir. The date on the forged document was recent. The seal was real. Someone inside Emberfall's own council had access to authenticate it. "Bram Ashford," Ren said aloud, testing the shape of the accusation and finding it fit with sickening precision. She rode back to Emberfall, not because Ronan had summoned her, and not because the bond pulled at her ribs with every mile, though it did, but because she now held proof that could unravel a conspiracy 5 years in the making, and she intended to place it directly in front of the full court herself. She found Ronan in the North Tower exactly where she'd left him, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence pulled from the council archives, his sleeves rolled and his eyes shadowed with the particular exhaustion of a man confronting the scale of what he'd allowed to happen under his own roof. "I found something," he said before she could speak, sliding a ledger across the table. "Bram Ashford has been quietly petitioning border pacts for 2 years, positioning himself as the natural authority over unclaimed Emberkin territory should the bloodline never resurface publicly. He wasn't just protecting himself the night you were rejected, Ren. He was counting on it. Your humiliation wasn't only convenient for the Sable Alliance. It was the foundation of a land claim he's been building ever since." Ren set the forged grant beside his ledger without a word. Ronan went very still as he read it. "This seal is real," he said. "Someone with archive access authenticated a forged claim to your land." "Someone who's been advising you for 5 years," Ren said. "Someone who told a grieving, cornered young king exactly what words to say to destroy me, and then spent every year since making certain I'd never have the standing to challenge what he built on top of that destruction. He's using Alaric," Ronan said slowly, the pieces settling into place with visible horror. "Not the other way around. Alaric thinks he's calling the right to seize a throne. Bram Ashford is using the right as cover to finally take Hollow's Edge legally, regardless of who wins. Then we don't just need to survive the right, Wren said. We need to expose him before it, in front of the full court, where he can't quietly disappear the evidence afterward. Her voice hardened into something Ronan hadn't heard from her before. Not grief, not fury, but command. This is no longer only about a bond you broke, or a crown you might lose. This is about a man who has spent 5 years planning to walk onto my land the moment he thought no one was left to stop him. I am not staying to save your throne, Ronan. I am staying to make certain he never gets the chance to try. Ronan looked at her for a long moment, not with the possessive hunger she remembered from 5 years ago, but with something that looked, for the first time, like genuine respect for a woman he was finally seeing clearly. Then let's make sure the whole court sees exactly what he's done, he said, before Alaric ever sets foot in that circle. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the first cold breath of the coming blood moon, and somewhere beyond the northern pass, soldiers who did not yet know their mission had already failed continued marking a border that was never going to be theirs. Chapter 4. The great hall of Emberfall filled faster than Wren had ever seen it, word of an emergency council session spreading through the keep like wildfire, until nobles, guards, and border envoys packed the vaulted chamber, shoulder to shoulder beneath the silver wolf banners. Bram Ashford stood near the front, silver-haired and composed, entirely unaware that the ground beneath his careful 5-year construction was about to give way. Ronan rose from the throne, not to sit upon it as a king delivering judgment, but to stand beside it, level with the room, which Wren noted was itself a small, deliberate rebellion against every instinct that throne had ever taught him. 5 years ago, he said, and his voice carried to the highest gallery without need of command, I stood in this hall and called my true mate a servant girl, mistaking fate for opportunity. I said those words because Counselor Bram Ashford told me, in this very room, that acknowledging the bond would collapse an alliance this kingdom needed to survive. I believed him. I was wrong to believe him, and I was a coward for letting his fear become my cruelty. A ripple of shock moved through the assembled nobles. Bram Ashford's composure did not yet crack, but his eyes had gone very still. What I did not know then, Ronan continued, was that Counselor Ashford had another reason for wanting the Emberkin bloodline discredited and hidden, one that had nothing to do with protecting this kingdom, and everything to do with what he intended to claim once he believed no living heir would ever come forward to contest it. At Ronan's signal, a guard carried forward the forged land grant, along with the ledgers documenting 2 years of quiet petitions to border pacts, and laid them before the full council for every witness to see. This is a fabricated declaration, Wren said, stepping forward to stand beside, not behind, the throne, her voice steady and clear enough to still the entire hall. Sealed with authentic council authority, declaring Hollow's Edge unclaimed territory, defaulted to the crown. I am the last living heir of the Emberkin line that founded this kingdom before the Ashgrave family ever wore a crown. That land is not unclaimed. It has never been unclaimed. It was only ever unacknowledged, because acknowledging me was inconvenient to a man in this very room. Bram Ashford's mask finally slipped. This is a misunderstanding, he began, a precaution taken during a period of genuine uncertainty about the bloodline's survival. A precaution, Wren cut in, that you built for 2 years, petitioning border pacts to recognize your authority over land that was never yours to claim, while advising the king who humiliated me not to correct the record that made your claim possible in the first place. She let the silence stretch. Let every witness in the hall feel the full weight of it. You did not protect this kingdom 5 years ago, Counselor. You protected an opportunity, and you have been quietly building on top of my erasure ever since." The hall erupted into murmurs, sharp with outrage, and Ronan raised a hand for silence before turning to the council bench directly. "Bram Ashford is stripped of his seat, effective immediately," he said, "and remanded for formal inquiry into land fraud and conspiracy against a recognized noble bloodline. Every treaty he has brokered on this council's behalf in the last 5 years will be reviewed. And let it be recorded before this full court that the Emberkin line's sovereignty over Hollow's Edge is not granted by this crown. It predates this crown. It answers to no one but its own heir." Guards moved to escort the former counselor from the hall, his protests swallowed by the rising noise of a court finally seeing clearly what had been built in the dark for half a decade. It was into that noise that a herald's horn sounded from the courtyard beyond, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. "Riders at the northern gate," the herald called, breathless, pushing through the crowd. "Alaric Vane demands immediate audience. He says the council's business here changes nothing. The right stands, the blood moon comes in 3 days, and he intends to claim this throne regardless of what conspiracy this court has just uncovered." Wren felt the old scar at her wrist pulse once, faint and cold, and understood with total clarity that exposing Bram Ashford had only removed one obstacle from a road that still led directly into the circle. "Then let him come," she said. "He'll find a very different woman standing in that circle than the one his information promised him." Chapter 5. The blood moon rose exactly as the old law demanded, vast and red above the training grounds of Emberfall, where the pack had gathered in a wide circle beneath torchlight to witness the rite that would decide, by the oldest laws of the kingdom, who held the right to its crown. Wren walked into the center of that circle before either alpha had shifted, and the entire gathered pack fell into a silence so complete she could hear the torches breathing. Alaric Vane bared his teeth, still in human form, his confidence sharpened into something cruel now that the ground beneath his claim had already begun to crack. "Careful, Emberkin girl," he said, circling her slowly, not touching her, but close enough that his voice carried to every witness at the ring's edge. "A woman who was cast aside once tends to make the same mistake twice. Do you truly believe this crowd cares whose blood runs in your veins? They care who is strong enough to rule them. Bloodlines are stories. Strength is the only law this circle has ever honored." "Then let's test which one this circle actually answers to," Wren said, and lifted her wrist. The scar there did not simply glow this time. It burned. A thin line of gold light spreading up through the old boundary stones set into the earth around the training ground. Stones so ancient most of the pack had forgotten they were anything but decoration. One by one, they answered her, flaring to life in a slow ring of light that circled the entire field, and a collective gasp rippled through the gathered crowd as the ground itself seemed to exhale. Alaric's step faltered, only slightly, but Wren saw it, and so did everyone close enough to the front to witness it happen. "This pact was not sealed by strength," Wren said, her voice steady even as the light climbed higher around them. "It was sealed by blood and by witness, and it recognizes exactly one thing above all else: truth spoken honestly inside this circle. You built your challenge on a forged claim to land that was never yours to threaten. The moment I named that forgery aloud, this circle already knew what you were, Lord Vane, long before either of these men throws a single blow." "Lies don't glow, Alaric," someone called from among his own supporters, a low voice, uncertain, but loud enough to carry. And Wren watched the ripple of doubt move backward through his ranks like a current finding its own direction. 2 of the border envoys who had come with him took a visible step back from his side, putting open ground between themselves and a claim that no longer looked as certain as it had an hour ago. Alaric's composure cracked. "This changes nothing," he snarled, shifting fast, fur and fury replacing the man in a single violent motion, iron gray and massive, eyes blazing with the particular desperation of someone who feels the ground disappearing beneath him. "I still take the throne by combat, exactly as the law demands." "Then take it," Ronan said quietly, stepping into the circle, already shifting. "From a man whose court just watched every lie you built collapse before you threw a single strike. Let's see how much of your strength was ever really yours, and how much of it was borrowed from a claim that no longer exists." The fight that followed was short, but it did not feel small. Alaric came in hard, fast, driven by fury rather than certainty, and for a handful of brutal seconds it seemed almost even, until the crowd's doubt became something Ren could feel humming through the boundary stones themselves, a pack's collective faith withdrawing from a challenger who had already lost their belief before he'd lost the fight. Ronan met him with the controlled, merciless precision of a man who no longer had anything left to prove to anyone in that circle except himself. And when Alaric finally went down, pinned hard beneath him, the surrender came fast. Not because Ronan had overpowered him through brute strength alone, but because an alpha challenging a throne on a lie cannot hold a pack's loyalty once that lie is standing exposed in gold light for every witness to see. Ren did not move from where she stood at the boundary line throughout the entire fight. She did not need to. Her place in that circle had never been to shield him. It had been to make certain that whatever happened next, Hollow's Edge would never again be a bargaining piece in another man's war. The old lawkeeper stepped forward once the fight ended, her silver eyes moving between the defeated challenger and the woman still standing calm at the circle's edge, and confirmed aloud, for the full pack and every border envoy present, that the Emberkin exemption stood, recorded, witnessed, and permanent. Hollow's Edge was removed from the right entirely, its sovereignty recognized independent of whatever crown ruled beside it. Ren turned and walked out of the circle the way she'd entered it, on her own authority, answering to no one, and did not look back to see Ronan's victory declared behind her. Chapter 6. 6 months passed before Ronan Ashgrave set foot on Hollow's Edge, and when he finally did, he came without guards, without a crown, and without a single expectation that anyone there owed him a welcome. In that time, Ren had watched him keep every promise from a careful distance, through sealed reports and quiet correspondence with old Issa, rather than any letter addressed to her directly. The council archives had been fully opened and independently audited. Bram Ashford's inquiry had concluded with formal exile, his fraudulent land petitions voided across every border pack he'd approached. The old law tying a king's marriage to political convenience had been dissolved entirely, replaced by a formal treaty recognizing Hollow's Edge as sovereign Emberkin territory, its governance, borders, and succession answerable to no crown but its own. Lyra Sable's name had been formally honored in the Emberfall archive, not as a footnote to a king's grief, but as a woman who had been failed by the same system that had failed Ren, her memory restored with a dignity 5 years of silence had denied her. None of it had been done to win Ren back. She understood that now, watching him stand at the edge of Hollow's Edge's market square in plain traveling clothes, waiting to be noticed rather than announced. "You didn't send word," she said, approaching him across the frost-touched square. "I didn't want you to have time to prepare a version of yourself for me," Ronan said. "I wanted to see who you actually are now, 6 months into governing your own land, answering to no one. I've heard reports. I wanted to see it myself, if you'll allow me that much." Ren studied him for a long moment. The careful stillness in his posture, the absence of any crown, any guard, any assumption that his presence entitled him to anything at all. "Walk with me, then," she said. "But understand what that is and isn't, Ronan. It isn't forgiveness handed over because you finally behaved the way a decent man should have 5 years ago. It isn't a reward for reparations that were owed regardless of whether I ever spoke to you again." "I know," Ronan said. "I didn't do any of it hoping it would earn this walk. I did it because it should have been done long before you ever had to fight for it yourself." They walked in silence past the market stalls, past villagers who nodded to Ren with the easy familiarity of people who trusted their leader completely, and who watched the King of Emberfall with careful, unhurried curiosity rather than fear. "I still feel the bond," Ren said finally, quiet enough that it was almost lost beneath the wind. "It didn't disappear because I chose myself over you. I don't think it's meant to disappear at all. But I want you to understand something clearly, because I will not say it twice." She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "I was never yours to claim, Ronan. Not 5 years ago, not in that circle, not now. I belong to myself first, entirely, and everything beyond that is mine to give, not yours to expect." "I know that," he said. "I don't want you to remember you're mine, Ren. I stopped wanting that the night I finally understood what it cost you. I want you to know you were always your own. And if you ever choose to let me stand beside you, it will be because you decided it, on terms I don't get to set." Ren looked at him for a long time, weighing 5 years of grief against 6 months of proof, weighing the ache of an unclaimed bond against the harder, more honest question of what she actually wanted, now that no one, not law, not duty, not fear, was making the choice for her. "Then you may walk beside me," she said finally, "not into Emberfall, not onto a throne, not into any story where I become your queen and disappear into your kingdom's history. You may walk beside me here, on my land, on my terms, for as long as you continue proving you understand the difference between wanting me and owning me." She paused, letting the wind settle between them before she spoke again, quieter this time, but no less certain. This was not forgiveness, not yet. It was permission to begin proving that the man before me was not the same man who had once mistaken love for possession. "That's the only kind of walking beside you I ever want to do again," Ronan said, "and I will not mistake permission for anything more than what it is." She did not take his hand, not yet, but she turned and let him walk with her through the heart of Hollow's Edge, past the border stones old Isa had once told her would recognize true Emberkin blood. And for the first time in 6 years, the old scar on her wrist did not ache with longing or loss. It simply rested, quiet and whole, exactly like a woman who no longer needed anyone's permission to belong entirely to herself.